I like to start with some numbers. Microsoft on the front lines, and the reason why we're saying that we're on the front lines is so daily we are analyzing over 24 trillion threat signals every day. So this goes through a bunch of very sophisticated artificial intelligence to determine whether or not maybe a user sign-in was okay or not, if the email that was sent was okay, if the file that is being shared should be, and so on. So all sorts of threat signals that we are analyzing and then kind of feeding that back to the learning engines to make it even more sophisticated and better. Last year, our systems blocked over 32 billion email threats. We are tracking 40 plus nation state actors and over 140 threat groups. So nation state actors, those are like government funded hackers that usually do a whole lot of damage. If you read the news, we just saw that one of the nation state actors did a very huge cyber attack just a couple of days ago, but the country was able to successfully defend themselves. So luckily, no harm was done. The other number here that I would like to mention is that we are protecting over 785,000 organizations in more than 120 countries. So just to kind of start out with some numbers. Now, the way we see security is kind of being end-to-end. So we're talking about endpoints, so actual devices where the users are coming into contact with all sorts of either threat activities or maybe in some in terms of compliance, users are sharing the files, they are maybe sending over company data, personal data, and so on. So endpoints kind of first part. Then email, of course, identity. If you remember yesterday, we had a nice session about how identity is at the core of everything and how it's like the baseline for everything that we do afterwards. Then we're talking about data. So for example, one cool example here is that we can actually create data classifications. And for example, I can type a very simple rule saying that if wherever in the files that our organization has, if a credit card number is detected, to immediately block sending that over an email, for example. So a lot of, for example, executive hacks happen where they convince someone to pay or send some money where they shouldn't. And here is a very simple solution to kind of scale down what the attackers would be able to do. Then we are talking about cloud. And here, very important part is that we are talking about our cloud, so Azure, Office, Microsoft 365, as well as other vendors' clouds. So what Microsoft offers is actually security, regardless of which cloud we are using. And the final one, apps. So here we are talking about who has access to what, connected to identity, single sign-on, securing the single sign-on, just-in-time access to apps. So for example, no need for me to have 24/7 and 36 days a year access to some apps. We can do a just-in-time procedure where I get access just before I need it, and then I get my access revoked just to adhere to the security standards. So those are kind of our pillars. And continuing with that, like I said, we want to secure the data and the endpoints and the identities wherever they are, regardless of which cloud they are in. So first off is zero trust as a foundation. So instead of just blindly assuming that users, devices, resources can have access to the resources that they are given, we kind of implement the zero trust mindset where everything is checked, everything is verified, and access is granted if certain conditions are met. Then we're talking about modernizing security and defending against threats. Again, securing cloud infrastructure, so either our cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, doesn't matter, to protect and govern sensitive data. And here also, I'll show you in the compliance part of our tools, you actually have like a checklist on how to be GDPR compliant, which auditing procedures we need to put in place, and so on, to really adhere to all of the standards. And then finally, manage and investigate risk. even if something happens, even if a cyber attack were to happen, how to detect it, how to manage it, how to prevent it from spreading further, and so on. So since security and compliance are kind of big topics, let me just break it down a little bit more. First, we're talking about Microsoft Defender and Sentinel. Here, the main focus is threat protection and cloud security throughout multi-cloud resources. Then we have Microsoft Entra. Here, the focus is on identity. So we can do, for example, we can automate the principle of least privilege everywhere. We can secure access to apps. We can give individuals the control of their data, but here really is the focus is on the identity. Then we have Microsoft Purview. Here we're talking about how to understand and govern the data, safeguard it, make sure that there's no data leaks from our organization, and improve the risk and compliance posture. So, for example, insider risks, we can mitigate them or secure against them through the software included in Purview. We can, as I mentioned before, the example, we can prevent accidental data sharing. So someone accidentally sends over some personal data or some top secret data through Purview. We can actually safeguard it quite easily. Then we have Microsoft Priva, focused on privacy, hence the name. So here we can identify what privacy risks we can encounter and also how to empower our employees to make smart data handling decisions. So not to save the personal data on their personal USB drives and so on. And finally, Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So this is for actual devices, the antivirus plus more. It's available for pretty much all of the platforms. And the good part is that since it's connected to the cloud, we can also see which devices are at risk, which devices had any security incidents, and then we can actually use the endpoint manager to mitigate all of those risks, to do an investigation, to see what was attacked, and so on. Okay, so let me first log in, or I'm already logged in, to the what was previously called Security and Compliance Center. Now this Compliance Center is renamed to Microsoft Purview. Now the first thing I can do, and it's actually quite simple, just to look around on the homepage. I see here that I have no active alerts, which is good, right? Then scrolling a bit further, I can see what are actually some of the actions I can take to increase my compliance score. Now let me switch over to the Compliance Manager just to show you what I mean with increasing my score. So compliance score actually analyzes all of the settings, all of the requirements, for example, for GDPR, all of the settings on my tenant, the actions that my users are doing. And it gives me easily, like step by step, what I need to do to improve it. So for example, if I look at here, I have 834 actions not completed and only 5 completed. So we can see immediately that on this tenant, I'm not really taking compliance seriously enough. And actually, if we look at here, it's actually the settings that I can implement have to do, for example, for data loss prevention, data lifecycle management, classification, things that have to do with Azure Active Directory, and so on. One thing that's worth mentioning here is that M365 is fully GDPR compliant, and therefore it can also offer how to improve the settings that I can set individually. Now, let me just look at the improvement actions just to show you how it works. So here I have the settings or the actions, improvement actions that I can make. Now, if I select here under regulations, I only have data protection baseline right now. Now, I don't have GDPR enabled on this tenant because it's hosted outside of the European Union. But if it would be hosted in the European Union, I would also have GDPR here. What I can also do is go under the Compliance Manager settings and just enable that I want to follow the same standards, the same compliance standards as GDPR, and then I will get additional actions that I can take. Okay, so let me check what I have here, and let's see, or actually let's go under solutions. Let's say I want to do something when it comes to compliance related to Microsoft Teams. I'm just going to select Microsoft Teams here, and let's see what happens. So again, immediately I have some of the things that I can do. And maybe one option, that the one that I'm going to select, is sensitivity labels. What that means is that I can actually set sensitivity labels either on the email level. So when I'm sending an email, I can classify it, for example, as top secret. I can do the same things in Teams or with the documents in general. Now, what sensitivity labels will do is that I can classify who has access to what. So for example, let's say Dennis and I are working on a top secret project together, and I really want to make sure that there's a sensitivity label, Jernej and Dennis top secret project, and I can set it so that if anyone else rather than Dennis and I wants to open anything that's designated with the sensitivity label, it won't work for them. Okay, so here it's saying that we don't have that enabled on Teams yet. And what's interesting now is I can here select edit implementation details. And for example, I can say it's planned, or we'll do it alternatively, it's out of scope, whatever. So this is just kind of to keep accountability and to track how the implementation is actually taking place. Okay, I also have the link to the documentation here, and also it says here how I need to implement it. I can also use Microsoft Solutions to implement, and let me just show you quickly what that means. And it's actually a pretty nice tool. So I will be redirected into the Teams administration. So it was a shortcut to get me to the right place. And when the Teams administration will open, here I will have under policies, I will be able to set all of the settings I want. If I forget or if I don't remember what I want to do, for example, I can always just switch back. So switch back to the admin center and see what the step-by-step instructions are to really make it happen. So this is from the compliance perspective. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to go through everything, but what I can also do, for example, is create alerts. So if anywhere of my employees, someone sends out the credit card information, I can set to alert me to make sure that that it won't get undetected. Another thing, for example, could also be information barriers. So with information barriers, I can designate parts of my company that cannot share the information between one another. Now, if we're talking about education, what we've seen with information barriers is that some schools actually set information barriers to prevent, for example, students in the first grade to be able to communicate to the students in the last grade. Just to decrease the chance of bullying, you can set, for example, information barriers in place, and that way they won't be able to communicate. Another one is also inside the risk management. So here I can set up, for example, if we have a shared SharePoint and we have all of the school financial information there, and we have, for example, working sheets, right? Who was working when, salary information or whatever. I can set up inside the risk management to ensure that that data is not going to be able to be copied onto a USB stick and taken out of the company or school. So all sorts of things that we can do here. As you can see, a lot of options. Now, we also have on our documentation side, we have modules like learning paths, interactive guides, and so on that you can take just to go through it step by step and to not be so scary, because it might look that there's a lot of things to implement, but as you can see, it's pretty much a guided process and it helps you. And we also have extensive documentation to help you there. So now I would like to move to the security part. As you can see, the admin center looks very much similar, but in this case, I switched over to the security center. Now, immediately, one of the things that I can do, I can see secure score here, right? So let me click that. Apparently, I have to log in again. So here we go, secure score. Now, same things as we had with the compliance manager, we have here. So secure score calculates what are the optimal settings to really ensure the highest security and usability. And then it gives me what are the things that I would need to address. And also what's interesting here is I have a comparison. So comparison means, in this case, comparison means it looks at similarly sized organizations that are similarly using M365 and other products. So it kind of has a profile of all of the different schools in this case, and it gives me a comparison that schools usually have a better score than I do. And so this can also be a motivation to address it, right? To address it to increase security. Now, I can check the history here. Some of the settings, right? Some of the settings here are implemented automatically. Like I mentioned before, right? Microsoft is analyzing trillions of signals every year. We are also investing billions of dollars to increase our security offering. And so when some settings that Microsoft deems as critical, essential, they will also get applied automatically. Okay, so moving back to secure score. So we have it here. Let's just take a look at what are some of the actions that I need to review. And I can also sort it based on the score impact. So let's say I want to see what are the most important ones that I should do. And the first one, which I think we can all agree with, right, is I want to require multi-factor authentication for administrative roles. Now, first off, this is a good idea in any case. Second off, the way I see it is we should be moving towards going passwordless. So not having any passwords at all. In Windows, this can be Windows Hello, where my computer recognizes me and unlocks itself. It can also be a FIDO key, or it can also be using the Microsoft Authenticator on your phone to confirm all of the login requests. But in this case, maybe I just want to require administrators to have it. And again, when I click on one of the options here, what happens is, first off, I get a description. I get the implementation status. So I have 4 out of 4 users with administrative roles that aren't registered and protected with MFA, so multi-factor authentication. And also user impact. So what I like here is that I actually get a warning in advance. How will this impact the users? Okay, so this will really help me not to take any action that would confuse the users or something that they wouldn't be prepared for. It actually gives me what the user impact would be. And so now it's up to me to say, okay, I have administrators. After we register them, they will need to do multi-factor authentication. It means that they will need to have their phone or something with them. Maybe I should take some time before I implement this to maybe do a short training for them, or maybe send them email instructions on what will happen and how to do it. So because of this warning, I can actually do the whole change management process to ensure that my users are ready for any changes that I do. Now, on the right-hand side, I also have links to, again, to the documentation, and it kind of justifies it why this would need to be implemented. Last things last, let's say I want to implement it. I have the big blue button saying Manage in Microsoft Azure. We'll just open that. And again, it will directly open the blade inside of Azure portal where I can create this policy. Okay, so I don't need to search for it. I don't need to search just the whole internet on where to implement it. I just follow the link. It redirected me here, and that's it. So let's see what else we have here, just to see some of the things that the system is suggesting for me to take. So I also have to ensure that all users can complete multi-factor authentication, meaning to make sure that they can register for multi-factor if they want to. Then I also have safe link policies for email messages. In this case, safe links basically mean that if I have it turned on, every link I get sent via Teams or over email and so on gets through a proxy that scans whether or not this is a known harmful site. It also scans if there's any irregularities on the site, and if not, it will redirect me to the link accordingly. If it detects that this is an unsafe link, it will give me a warning just to make sure that I don't come to a website where I shouldn't be. So again, here it gives me the option to create some new policies for safe links. Then we have safe attachments here. Safe attachments, another feature that's working through Teams or through the email, is that every single email attachment gets scanned before it even comes to my inbox. And so what would happen is that the majority of malware would get detected, would get detonated, and I would just get a notification that something was sent to me. So again, these are all systems that are pretty much working independently and automatically. These additional changes, settings, and so on. Okay. Then I also have here protect all users with a user risk policy or sign-in risk policy. So in this case, I can also set what happens if someone tries to log in and Azure detects that this is either a compromised location, compromised device, that the username might have been stolen. So again, here, automatically it will block it and alert me, but I can also make some additional changes if I would want to. Okay, so not to go through all of the settings here, as you can see, I have quite a lot of work to do to really implement all of the changes here. Now, another one, if I check individual actions here and go under implementation, I will actually also get a step-by-step written instructions. And then I also have links, more links to the documentation to really make sure I know what I'm doing. Okay. With that, let me move to probably one of my favorite features inside of M365 Defender, attack simulation training. Go to. So, what is attack simulation training? Inside of M365, I can actually launch an attack towards my users. So I, as an administrator, can perform, for example, a phishing simulation to see how well my users know not to click on suspicious things. So if any of you have been doing this before, then you know that usually you need to outsource it, right? Or you do it yourself, and you spend a lot of time to prepare the scenario, to do the fake websites and so on and so on. Whereas here, everything is already included. So I can, in 5 minutes, I can send a suspicious email to all of my employees, all of my students even, and then get back information on how many people clicked on the link, how many people, for example, would download the file, how many people would enter their username and password where they shouldn't. So all that just through here. Let me show you how it looks. We launch a simulation. So first off, I can ask, what's the technique? So credential harvest means I want to redirect users to a fake login site and convince them to type in their username and password. Malware attachment, let's say I want to send them a suspicious looking file and see whether or not they will be clicking it and if they will be opening it. Then I also have a linking attachment to track what happens if they get a URL. Would they follow it? Would they try to download stuff? Then there's also link to malware. So again, link that would directly try to download malware on their computer. Then there's also the drive-by URL. So in this case, they get onto a website that will be running some background code. And then also the OAuth consent grant. So this is if you ever use your Microsoft account to log in through any other services, that's where you get the OAuth consent grant, where it asks you, are you sure you want to allow this application? Would you like to log in with your Microsoft account and so on? So this is what OAuth consent grant is. And here we are faking, just basically wanting to see if the users will consent to the application accessing whatever resources or not. So in my case, I want to do a credential harvest. So let's see if I can steal usernames and passwords of my users. I'm going to click next. So simulation, I'm going to name it IT Bootcamp. Next. And now what's interesting here is that I can select a payload and a login page. So in this case, I have 116 pre-made, ready-made websites that look like, for example, I have here American Express password reset, lower it's the DHL shipment confirmation, then eDog delivered, for example. There's also a Facebook account verification, and so on and so on. So really a lot of PayPal even, and so on. So as you can see, 160 ready-made templates that I can use to immediately start testing my employees. Let me just show you a couple of these. Oh, and by the way, if you want to create your own, you can also click create a payload here, provide your own script, and you will see it. And by the way, there's also statistics here. What's the prediction? What's the percentage of users that we are expecting to get with some of these scenarios? So let's check for the DHL shipment confirmation, and I can actually see. I can see what the email will look like. So this is the payload, and then I can see what the login page will look like. So let me just load that. So yeah, it will show a fake login page for Microsoft account. And then if they type in the username, they will also need to type in the password, and that's it. Okay. Let me move back. Let's see what happens with Facebook. So again, the email and then the login page. Now here, the login pages and the payloads are made just a bit suspiciously. And that's because we want users to be able to detect that there is a phishing attempt, right? So we don't want exact copies. It's automatically, they leave in some clues to make sure that users have the option to identify it as a phishing attempt. Okay, let me check what Netflix does. Okay, this one looks quite scary. So let me select this one. Okay, so now I have the scenario that we are going to use. I can go next. Do I want to include all of my users in the organization, or do I want to include only specific users or groups? So in this case, maybe it would make more sense to do a Netflix attack on all of the students and maybe American Express attack on all of the teachers, or maybe the faculty, the administration, and so on. In my case, I'm just going to say include all users in my organization. Here's all of the names. Next. And what's cool is that I also have pre-created trainings that whenever one of the users would fall for this phishing attack, they get assigned training, and then the system tracks who finished the training. We can give them the deadline, how much time they have before they have to complete it. And then I also get a report saying, okay, these are the users that fell for the scam. These are the users that already completed the training. These are the users that need to complete it by themselves. So I can either just leave this in, so it's already pre-made and I can just ship that. Or if I have my own custom training, I can also use this option here. I'm just going to say Microsoft training. Also, if I want the system to automatically say which modules I want to select, or I can say select courses and modules by myself, and then I can select in the next step, I think, yeah, I can select which trainings I want to assign to my users. So let's get them loaded. Okay, so here you see I have the resources and also the duration. So these are short ones, made short so that people actually don't lose their attention and actually go through them. But let's just say I've changed my mind. Let's say I want to have Microsoft assign it for me. I can also have a landing page for the simulation. So whenever falls for the trick, I can either leave it. Hold on, let me show you. I can either have the website that Microsoft pre-designed. So it's this one, right? You just got filled by your security team. But if I want to create my own website, I can also do that. And as you can see here, I also have tips on how to identify phishing messages. And also immediately if I want to start training or add them to the calendar. And hold on here, let's do payload indicators. So here you see now I have kind of a tutorial guiding me through how I would be able to identify that this was a phishing message. Oh yeah, this is it. Okay, once I'm satisfied with this, next. End user notification, I'm just going to put the default ones. Next. Sorry. Delivery preference. During. So notifications in this case are, first off, positive reinforcement notification. So this is after they fell for the trick. We can still send them like automatic emails saying, hey, it happens, you're still human, right? Default training assignment, not applicable in this case because they will get it either way. And then training reminder to not forget it, to not forget to complete it. So let me just put it like that. And then also, when do I want to launch this simulation? I want to launch it immediately. And how long do I want the simulation to last? So let's say 5 days. I can also do a region-aware time zone delivery, meaning that, for example, if I have some colleagues from the US, so that's 8-hour difference, right? It wouldn't make sense if they get an email at midnight or something like that. So I can enable this to make sure that everyone gets email at times that make sense. Okay, so now that all of this is finished, let's say I just want to check it one last time to make sure that everything is done correctly. Let me just open up my email. Apparently I've been signed out. But while we wait, let me just launch this simulation. And so what will happen now is that the simulation will be sent because I selected to send it to all of the users. All of the users will get it. So I will be able to actually check in real time who clicked on the link, who fell for the trick, and so on. And it's actually very good that I can be like informed immediately. And then at the end, the system actually creates a report for me so that I can have kind of an overview. Now, ideally, you would do this several times per year, right? Just to test how well informed your students, teachers, and other employees are. Okay, so this is the email that was sent to me. Okay, now let's say I click on the link. So in this case, it just says ping successful because I was the one that created the campaign and I sent it to myself. So that's why it says all good. But other users will see the fake login page in this case. Okay. So now that it's been sent, as you can see here, I have some other simulations from before. So I can just check back and I can see what the compromise rate was, right? So how many people fell for the trick. And again, this is something that I would strongly suggest to every organization to try, because at the end of it, users are usually the weakest link in every organization. So doing something like this and training them, upskilling your users will pay off in the long run. Now, one last thing that I would like to show before I turn it back to Dennis. Now, okay, so this is a new tenant and it's not set up yet. Okay, let me show you something else then. So let's say I check under incidents if this tenant has had any security incidents. And it's still configuring, okay? Then let me do something else. Not working, okay. Learning Hub should work. So I wasn't able to show you that, but still, Learning Hub, what it is, it's a collection with, first off, how to, you as administrators, how to use Microsoft 365 Security Center. And you can see here, you have the basic training for endpoint, Defender for endpoint, the setup, so how to set it up. Then you also have lower here, so Microsoft 365 Defender, so not only endpoints, but also for the cloud resources. Then some more on endpoints, how to handle ransomware in SharePoint. So all of that content and much more you have available. So the reason why I'm showing you this is just to show you that while, yes, there is like hundreds of features that you can use, also a lot of them work perfectly just out of the box. So no need to configure anything. And if you want to do a deeper dive, you have all of the training materials included here already.